Hi, I'm Troy from Studio 33 Guitar. Today we're going to look at the 4 essential guitar chords you need to know. We're going to look at the best way to play them, and I'll give you some tips on how to change from one chord to another smoothly. These 4 chords are basically the magic chords. As you begin to learn more songs, you'll quickly find out that 90% of popular music, whether it's rock, country, or pop, uses these 4 chords in the song. We're going to go through these 4 chords pretty quickly, but if you would like a more in-depth look at these chords and the theory behind them and tips on how to play them better, you can also check out our website, studio33guitarlessons.com, where we break down each chord, look at the theory, and we'll also learn some strumming patterns to help you play your favorite songs. So let's jump right in, zoom in on the neck, and have a look at these chords. The 4 chords that we're going to learn are G major, C major, D major, and E minor. Now we're going to do a slight variation on a couple of those. So if you've learned these chords before, you may want to still stick with this video and have a look at some of the variations and some of the tips that I'll give you. Let's start with the simplest one first, and that's going to be E minor. Because it's an E minor chord, we're going to start with this low E string. It's ringing open. So we're not going to put any fingers on that low E string. But our index finger is going to go on the 2nd fret of the next string, the A string. And then our middle finger is going to go directly below it on the next string down, which is the D string. And that's all we need for the E minor chord. And now all 6 strings will ring. So that'll sound like this. It's important when you're playing these chords to make sure that you're getting a good curl to your fingers and that you're playing with your fingertips. You don't want to play with your fingers flat because your fingers will get in the way of the other strings. If you play with them more flat, then your chord will end up sounding more like this. So you need to make sure that you get a good curl around to your fingers, and that may mean taking your wrist and pushing it out slightly. Get a good curl around with the fingers and play with your fingertips. You also want to try and get your fingers to be as close to the fret as you can. And that'll give you the least amount of buzz. For this E minor chord, because both of these fingers are on the same fret, you won't be able to get them both right up close to the fret because it'll make your wrist go into an awkward position. So your index finger will need to be back a little bit further. But if you can get that middle finger as close to the fret as you can, that'll give you the best sound. You don't want to be right on top of the fret. You want to be just behind it. Now I'll show you a variation of that E minor chord that will be extremely useful to you. This is actually called an E minor 7 chord. Now don't worry too much about the name, but just know that this chord can usually be substituted for an E minor chord. So if you're reading a chord chart and it says E minor and you play an E minor 7, most of the time it's going to sound great. For an E minor 7 chord, we need to add one more note. Now you'll see this shown a few different ways, and there's different ways to play it. I'm going to show you 2 ways to do it. The first way, which is really common, is just by adding your pinky finger to this note right here. So that is on your B string, which is the 2nd string up, and it's on the 3rd fret. So the other 2 fingers stay right where they were, and you're just adding that pinky finger, and the ring finger still just stays off. So that E minor 7 would sound like this. So again, the regular E minor, E minor 7. Now you could also play that same shape using your ring finger instead. It's just a little bit more of a stretch. Now I'll show you one more variation that I think is the best way to play this chord. Now what we're going to do is use this pinky finger and add it in to the note directly below where our ring finger is. So now we have those two fingers stacked together on the highest two strings. And then our original two fingers back where they were. So now we have all four fingers down. We're still strumming all six strings, and that sounds like this. So either way is still an E minor 7 chord because this note is the one that makes it a 7. But you can play that either way. I recommend playing it this way, and you'll see why that is when we look at the next chord. The G chord is going to start with your middle finger on the 3rd fret on the low E string. So again, make sure that you get that note close to the fret and make sure that you have a good curl around to your fingers. You're playing with your fingertips. So middle finger on there, your index finger, the next string down, but back 1 fret. That note right there. And the next 3 strings we're actually going to leave open. So we're not going to put any fingers on those next 3 strings. But on the highest string, we're going to play this note right here. So the 3rd fret on the highest E string. So you can play that a couple of different ways. Sometimes you'll see it shown with the ring finger playing that note. And that would sound like this. You can also play it with your pinky finger. Now I said I was going to show you the variation that I think is the most useful, the one that I recommend. And that would be like this. Playing with your pinky finger down, but also adding in your ring finger on this note, 3rd fret on the B string. So now you have 4 fingers down, playing all 6 strings. Now the reason that I recommend playing it this way with these 2 fingers down is because you may remember those are the same 2 notes that we used in that E minor 7 chord. The E minor 7 chord looks like this. The G major chord is like this. So those 2 notes get to stay in that same position for both of those chords. And that's really helpful when you're changing from one chord to another to be able to leave some fingers in the same position. It'll make your chords change a lot smoother because you're not having to move as many fingers. You may have also noticed that the G major chord and E minor chord also share the note that's being held down by the index finger. So the G major chord played like this, and the E minor chord played like this. The only thing that changes is our middle finger. So that becomes a lot easier to make one chord change to the other. If you were to use some of the other fingerings that I showed you, like for example, this one, to play that G major chord, now to go to that E minor chord, you need to move those 2 fingers, move your ring finger up, and now add your pinky finger down. But if we leave those 2 fingers there, we can just keep them for both of those chords. So that's why I recommend using the G major chord with these 2 fingers down like that. The next chord we're going to look at is the C major chord. Now C major traditionally is played this way. And that's a bit of an awkward chord to play. It's a difficult one, especially as beginners, to get. There's 3 fingers on there on different strings combined with the open strings. It's quite often difficult to get that chord to sound nice and clean. So again, I'm going to show you a variation on this one. We're going to skip this one altogether for right now. I'm going to show you what's called a C add 9 chord. And you're going to like this because this is the exact same fingering as the G major chord. We're just going to move 2 fingers down. So let's start with that G major chord again. with these two fingers down here. To make a C add 9 chord, all we have to do is move our middle and index fingers down one string each. So they stay in the exact same position, they just move down. So you can think about those two fingers being locked together in that shape. So when you move from one chord to the other, you'll just move that shape together like that. You don't want to move one finger and then the other one. You want to try and move them both at the same time. So the C add 9 chord, just like this, and now we're not playing this low E string anymore. Now a trick that I do with this C add 9 chord is I'll use my middle finger just to nudge up against this low E string to help keep it from ringing. So then if I'm strumming and I accidentally play that E string, then it won't actually sound because that middle finger just pushes up against it to keep it from ringing. So just that string on its own would sound like this. So if I strum all 6 strings, you can't notice that low E string ringing. It helps it a little bit when you're strumming. You don't have to be quite as specific of which strings you're strumming. And the final chord that we're going to play is the D major chord. So D major is actually going to use that same note that our ring finger has been on for all the other chords. So place that down there first. So that's actually a D note. Now our index finger is going to go one string up from that and back 1 fret. And our middle finger is going to go directly below the index finger, but down 2 strings. So middle finger on the 2nd fret, ring finger, 3rd fret of the B string, and then our index finger right there. And then we're going to play the open D string along with those. So now we're only playing 4 strings for this chord. So we're skipping over the first 2 strings, starting with the D string and then the rest. So that'll sound like this. Again, this is going to be an important one that you get that good curl around with your fingers and get the fingertips in there. And again, try and play as close to the frets as you can. So the great thing about the fingering that I've shown you for these chords is the common notes that are in there. And that will really help you to make these chord changes smoother. So the D note that we were holding down with our ring finger is the same for all 4 chords. So that never has to move. Our pinky finger gets to stay in that position for 3 out of the 4, which will really help. So when we play a chord progression like G to C, and then E minor to D. So when you're playing those chords, you want to make sure that you don't lift this ring finger off for any of them, because you're just going to have to put it right back down again. And for the 3 out of the 4 chords, leave that pinky finger down. The other fingers, try and move as little as possible. So try and have as little movement as you can. So when you're changing from the G chord to the C chord, again, try and think of those 2 fingers as being locked together in that shape. They just move together. Try not to separate them and lift them way off the neck and come back down. Try and make that movement as small as possible. So from G down to C. And then for that E minor chord, again, you want to try and do as little movement as possible. Take your index finger and just move it up 1 fret. Try and stay close to the strings as you make that change. Don't come way out and then back down again, because that time that it takes you to come out and back, you're going to need that in order to make the chords smoother and quicker. So from the C chord to the E minor, just real small movement, index finger up, and then tuck that middle finger underneath it. So the trickiest one to change to is going to be that D major chord. So when you go to that one, you want to try and get that index finger down. You're moving down 2 strings, then you're moving your middle finger down to the bottom, and then you can just lift the pinky finger off. So there you have it. Those are the 4 chords that you will be able to play most of your favorite songs with. Now, those particular chords are in the key of G. If you want to play those in another key, you can easily do that using a capo. If we take our capo and put it on the 2nd fret, then we can move those exact same chord shapes up the neck. We just have to move them up 2 frets. And now we would be playing in the key of A. So the chord shapes stay the same: G, C add 9, D, and E minor 7. But in actuality, the chords that we're playing are A, D add 9, E, and F sharp minor 7. So in our minds, we're still thinking about the original chords because those are the shapes that we're using, but the capo is making everything sound higher. So it's changing the key for us. You can learn more about how to use a capo, what the key of a song means, and how to transpose songs from one key to another on our website, studio33guitarlessons.com. If this video was helpful, please let us know by clicking the like button, and we'll continue to make more videos like this. Also, make sure that you subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our next video. Thanks for watching.